welcome to Quilt Stories. I'm Lisa Walton, and today I'm chatting with Jim Smith and Andy Brunhammer, who are in Florida, where apparently, even though it's winter, it's a lovely warm day, and they say they only get about 4 days of winter a year, so those of you struggling under snow at the moment will be really jealous. I'm in Sydney, Australia, where it's going to be about 100 degrees today, so it's a bit warm, but that's okay. I was really fascinated to know about Andy and Jim because they collaborate on their quilts, and I think collaboration is a really difficult thing to do, and they're obviously doing it really successfully. They're currently in the process of doing a series on orchids, which I suspect is a passion of theirs. And so it's going to be really interesting to just see the process they take to make one of their quilts. And then we're going to hear about why orchids, all about the process, and what they plan to do with their series when it's done. So, welcome, gentlemen.
Good day.
Hello.
Good day. That was not too bad. Not too bad at all, Jim. This is orchid number 2. And how many are there in the series?
We're trying for 14 orchids and 1 amaryllis
Why one amaryllis?
because that just sounded good.
We have a lovely photo of this inspirational orchid. Well, obviously you would know the name of it. What's it called?
I'm ignorant to the names. It's
Okay.
only because I have a block against all the Latin I took in school so many years ago, and I cannot guess what it. All I know is it's bloomed every year for the past 5 years.
Oh, lovely. And do you have a hothouse, or you don't need a hothouse?
Just the lanai, the porch by the pool. I hang them from the ceiling, and all over the place. There's an iris-looking one that's all in bloom right now with all yellow flowers all hanging over the pool edge. They just keep blooming. Sometimes I'm lax at taking care of them, and I could be shot by a number of orchid lovers. And I just know that I've been doing it for such a long time. They just come and go, and they do. I let them do what they want to please to do.
Andy, this is not your passion?
No. I have a black thumb when it comes to anything that grows.
But you don't have a black thumb when it comes to sewing. You've been sewing together for quite a while, but you told me that you had quite an interesting. Both of you were you're retired bankers, which is a far cry from full-time quilters. So would you like to tell us a little bit about how you fell into quilting?
My thesis for my master's was to take a cottage industry and create a corporate concern. And it was just before the explosion of the types of machines that are on the market today, the sewing machines, with all the gadgets. And we started doing embroidery work. This was in about 1998. And we just sort of puttered around doing the quilting because both of our jobs, we were both traveling about 95% of the time through the United States, and I started traveling into Europe. Then in about the year 2000, I was in a major car accident, so that kiboshed everything to do with quilting. And then in about 2003, I asked Andy if he'd like to do this full time after we retired.
And what was your answer, Andy?
I was fine with it. I'd never really done quilts before we started to do a few, but I did sew when I was in college, so I knew how to at least sew.
And you had a slight textile background, though.
Yeah, it was on the science side for the most part. So I looked through college. I got my degree in the science side of making different fabrics, dyes, how they react with laundry detergent, abrasions, that type of thing. That was really my concentration.
And so at what point did you decide this was how you were going to spend the rest of your lives?
We were retired and we needed something to do. We had, like I said, we'd been puttering around actually donating our quilts to auctions and charitable auctions. And as it went, we just enjoyed creating the quilts and then learning all the necessary sort of requirements in quilt making, but trying not to be fixed into a specific niche. And that's sort of how it went from there. Another one of our series, it's called the Hope Project. We did 48 quilts, all that have 100 origami cranes that we created the pattern and the quilt. There's over, I think, 1,300 cranes in all the pieces.
Wow.
And each one of the quilts are different. And we sort of do art quilts, and then we like doing series.
Why do you think that is?
It keeps us focused for a while, and I like to play with the art factor and try different things. And the progression, so far we've done 7 of the 14 orchid quilts, and in each one I've tweaked something in the design of the pattern. And as long as Andy can do what he needs to do, I'll just keep tweaking and seeing if I can do something different in the design and work it from there.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about the process now because
we're using Tammy Bowser's technique. She has a program that I got a hold of, and you have to enter in the component parts to create the design. You import the picture, which was that picture of the orchid that I scanned in, and then you choose the number of fabrics and the different techniques that she does provide. So we started, I think this was about 15 different fabrics in this one. But overall, we decided at the beginning that we were only going to do solid fabric. Tammy in her work uses a lot of printed fabrics and works and batiks and shades. And so everything's based on shades. So this print job, this one I think was...
They come out to about 36 pages.
Now, now on the 7th one. This was our first one that we did.
Right.
And this was the minimum amount of pages that we needed.
Okay, I've got it. I've actually done a class with Tammy, and I have her program as well, but I haven't used it in a long time. I should pull it out, check it out.
Okay.
So here's a bit of a close-up. So this is giving you the numbers which I relate to the color, to the fabrics, yeah?
Yes. The program works that it subdivides it by shade based on the number of fabrics and the number of pieces that you key into the program. Right.
Now we are drawing. Whose arm is this?
That's my arm. The hairy arm.
I wasn't going to say anything about that.
This is where we step away from her technique and how she creates her quilts. And we kind of came up with our own version of hers. And we take tracing paper or parchment paper and recreate the quilt using what numbers we decide we want to keep out of the ones that come up on the program.
Right.
And I just outline it.
We now call it our topographical map.
Yeah, it looks like it, doesn't it?
And
this is after Jim's printed the piece and we put the paper on. I trace out the colors individually, so each section is a different color, and that's what this represents. It's just the outlines of all the different fabrics.
And what Andy's doing at this point is he's actually creating a pattern and all the pattern pieces for our, as we now call it, fabric by number.
Yes, it is a bit, isn't it? It's quite a few pieces, definitely. And then we start looking at fabric.
Tammy's program prints out a series of colors based on my image that I put in of the orchid. We then sit down with fabric. We use the Kona cotton. We pick colors that might come close to that shade, but in keeping, we decided that we weren't going to really worry about being realistic anymore.
Okay.
We're not looking for a realistic design. We're looking for an more abstract.
Is this background fabric or it's a larger?
What we do is we take our topographical map, and we have a light that I can put the topographical map on, and then trace it onto the Steam-A-Seam 2. And that's what we use to cut out the pieces for the quilt.
The green was, which is the background in the picture now, it was a decision that we didn't have a specific color, so I said, let's try this color.
Okay.
So that was, and each time the nice thing about the Steam-A-Seam and the fusible web is that we put it on so it's temporarily at this point. And then if we don't like it, we can then pull that off and replace it with another color.
And these are the pieces.
Yes.
We figure out how much fabric we're going to need. I press the template onto the fabric, and then we cut all the pieces out. And the pieces are numbered, so I know where to put them.
Yeah, you would get a little bit lost, wouldn't you, sometimes?
I don't touch this part.
Okay. That's what I love. I love it when I hear people who collaborate, you know, like, I don't touch this part, and this is Andy's part, this is Jim's part. So is this on batting now?
This is the batting.
With the backing.
With the backing underneath.
Okay.
Something that I found that I like to do, not everyone likes to do this, I like to get the biggest stitch I can get on my machine and stitch a grid onto the batting and the backing, and instead of having safety pins.
Right.
And that works for me because I can rip out the big stitches once everything's quilted.
Yeah. A lot of them, I've got a Bernina Q20, and it's actually got a basting stitch, and you can do 1, 2, or 4 stitches an inch, and I use that a lot. It's really useful. Ties it all in together. So these are just sort of, they're not heat stuck down with seam and steam, are they? They're just sort of tacky.
This is after I've placed it and then ironed it. And one of the things that I did on this first quilt, I would do a section, iron it, and then stitch around each piece.
Right.
And I found that was not very effective or efficient for me. So now we do the whole quilt where we press it. Then I go back and stitch each piece individually.
Okay, I think we're going to get a close-up of the stitching later, but it's not a zigzag, is it? It's just a straight stitch?
No, it's just a straight stitch.
This is you.
Yes.
Andy, is it?
I can sew as well. The only thing is he's much better technician than I am. So I dropped that process, and I handle all the computer work, all the marketing, the trying to get contacts and such.
Okay, yeah. No, I used to do all the fabric dyeing in my house till I taught my husband, and he is much better at it than I am, and he's much more precise. So he now has to do it all. Just suits me just fine. I get the serendipitous stuff.
This was the next section that I ended up doing.
So do you scribble it out when you've done the piece, by the look of it?
I did back then. I don't do that now.
Okay. Whoa, this is looking very complicated now.
I have to overlap the pieces to make sure that I cover all of the batting. And the one thing that I run into, and I had to play around with, when you use Steam-A-Seam, of course there's glue, so there's going to be some sticking to the needle. And that can break your thread and cause all kinds of problems. And I did buy, there's an oil that you can put on the needle that's supposed to help with the glue not sticking. That didn't really work for me. So I ended up taking They're actually for my glasses that you can clean off your glasses from
Yeah.
the optometrist. And that's what I clean the needle with.
Okay.
So I may stitch for a minute, stop, and I clean the needle.
Okay.
That way I end up not breaking threads, and threads are more even. It's just a trick I picked up.
Yeah, I've got some of that. I should try it. I use a lot of fusible. So how do you sort of avoid those gaps? Because your cutting out will have to be exact, won't it? If it's going to fit.
Yeah, when I'm tracing,
Yeah.
I purposely go not quite a quarter of an inch outside
Right.
of the piece I'm tracing, so that way there's an overlap.
Okay, good. Yeah, that otherwise, yeah, I know I would make a real mess of that. There'd be holes everywhere.
And what I found is if I make a mistake and it's not quite covered, then I just cut another piece and put it over,
Yes.
and you can't, it blends right in. So.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we're starting to come together here.
The nice thing about the patterns and the work that we're doing with this, we haven't really constricted ourselves to a paint by number.
Mm-hmm.
We have a freedom that goes. I mean, some people have asked me, do I have patterns for these? Yes, I've got the Tammy Bowser pattern that you can use, but no, we don't have a pattern because we're doing it free form.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah. And I mean, there's decision making there that you've already talked about when you've sort of decided not to use this shape, or maybe to merge a couple of shapes and things
right.
like that, just to simplify them. I can see, there is that level of your own personal creativity in there. And I think people would still be fairly intimidated even if you put out your own simplified patterns. And how big is this?
It's almost 36 by about 42.
Okay, so yeah, they're pretty large, aren't they?
Yes, yeah. And originally, I had decided that we were going to do all of them the exact same size.
Mm-hmm.
I gave that up by about the third or fourth one, when they weren't coming out, that they would look sort of distorted.
Right.
So we decided that we would just do them as it came up,
Mm-hmm.
and not worry about just get them approximate, because I'm thinking about the placement if they're all put together in a show.
Right. So we've got the stitching happening here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you trim after you stitch, or you just go really close?
I go close, and then I will trim if I need to.
Okay.
This was the first one, and to be honest, it's not as good as the ones I'm doing now.
Of course. I mean, we improve
as I've
every time we do
learned,
something.
as I've done.
And do you match the color to each piece of fabric?
As close as I can. But some of the colors, they really don't have to absolutely match.
Yeah.
Because you can't see them really unless you're close up.
Right.
And sometimes it gives a nice highlight. So
yeah. Here we've got this one finished with all the pieces stitched down, but it's still not finished, is it?
Right. We're going to, once we've finished all 15 pieces, decide if we can come up with a design of a quilt design, sort of it's almost like putting lace on top.
Right.
So
you'll
but
make
then again,
the addition, and then Andy has to do it.
Right.
Okay. So what sort of sewing machine plural do you have?
I use the Janome M7. It's their newest. Really good for quilting.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely my favorite.
Right.
We do have a long arm. We never use it.
Okay, that's a shame.
I'm just not as fond of the long arm as I am with my M7.
Yep. Yeah, we get comfortable with what we have. Oh, well, you could always sell your long arm and buy lots more fabric.
That room is full of fabric, the same one that the long arm's in.
Actually, the fabric is on the long arm.
Okay, we've just turned the lights on because it's starting to turn into nighttime in Florida. But what's that big shelf with stuff behind it? I'm very inquisitive.
It's part of our Royal Doulton collection.
Right?
We have been collecting for years, and um, we have them all hidden all over the place in the house, gathering dust. In some of the Doulton pieces are inspirations for our quilting,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the pieces, Atalanta, which is a Greek goddess figurine. It's a nude figurine, and we created a quilt that has the figurine, and it was done with batik, which we love working with batiks. It's funny that we didn't use batiks in our orchid, but we just decided we'd try solids. We like to experiment a lot. So the Doulton does give us a lot of inspiration as we look at them.
They're really gorgeous. I can see why you're addicted to collecting them and orchids. Any other collections that you are obsessed by?
Well, I love to cook. There are cookbooks in piles throughout this house.
I'm sure Andy doesn't mind that. Do you? You enjoy the food, so.
Yeah, we do have, and I like to experiment. The same thing with the art work, and there's our paintings in the house, and then the stash of piano books as I play the piano.
It's okay. I don't think you're alone, actually. I don't think I've ever met sort of a quilt artist that doesn't also have a collection of this or a collection of books or a collection of, even if it's just a collection of threads or, there's always the dreaded stash. So.
And there are 4 dogs that run around. Yes.
Oh, okay, so quite a bit happening in your home. That sounds interesting. I love artists' homes. It's been really fascinating learning about your quilts. You've made me think I must get out my program and see if I can create something interesting with them as well. I do like playing around with computers as well as fabric. So yeah, I have to do it all myself though. You can split the roles, which is really good. It's lovely to meet you and to see how you collaborate. It's been really interesting. So I'm sure everyone else has found it interesting as well. And if you have, please subscribe. There's a subscribe button down below. Yes, that's great. Thank you. And also a thumbs up would be really appreciated. And so I'd like to thank you for giving me your time today. And I look forward to seeing the completed series.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Really
So thanks everyone for watching, and bye for now.
Bye.